Hi everybody, I'm Zilla Blitz and welcome. Today we're asking one single question. Can we, as the United States forces at the beginning of the Vietnam War, fight the Vietnam conflict and save South Vietnam? Now we're going to play a game, Save South Vietnam, from Fortress Games that covers the entire span of the Vietnam conflict. It's over 12 years and it's a solitaire game where you take charge of the US forces. Now you might be wondering, what are the odds we're going to succeed in this adventure? I can tell you, I've played the game 1.5 times. The first time I played the game, I lost on turn 2 out of 50. Kind of lost the Vietnam War before it even started. I shared that news with the designer of the game and he said this. Yeah. To my defense, the second time we made it through like 4 years and I got through the Tet Offensive, and then I said I'm going to stop and make the videos. So I kind of understand how to play the first 3 years. The last 9 years of the conflict, we're going to uncover this together. Now this is a big game, right? Probably 4 to 6 hours to play the whole game through. So we're going to do a different style here. We're going to do it after action style. We'll talk about what that means as we jump in and take a look at the game. So let's get an overview of the conflict and what our objectives are. First up, what are we looking at? This is the map of South Vietnam. It's been carved up into 9 different geographic regions. Saigon lies to the left side of the screen as you're looking at it. It's important because this is the singular objective in the game. If Saigon falls at any point in the conflict to the Viet Cong or North Vietnamese armies, we lose. If we hold Saigon for the length of the conflict, we win. It's that simple. That's our sole objective. I do want to mention that this is going to be a different type of video format than I've done before. This is going to be an after-action style video. So basically I'm going to break in at every 6 months to a year. And again, there's 12 years in this conflict. I'm going to show what happened in the previous 6 months to a year. Then I'm going to talk about what our objectives are and what my thoughts are for the upcoming portion of the game. Then we're going to keep doing that until we make our way through the entire 12-year campaign. Now, it might not last that long. It might last 6 months if I have a similar luck as I did in my first game. But the goal is, can we make it 12 years? Now, there's a few reasons why I want to do that. One, this is a game that takes about 4 to 6 hours to play out. In video format, that would probably be about 8 to 12 hours. So that's a huge video series for one game. So I want to try to see if we can condense a longer video series into about 2 to 3 episodes by trying this different format. Secondly, I think this format of showing the entire conflict is going to be a good way to highlight one of the things that I think is the coolest thing about this game, which is the ebb and flow of the game, how it changes from year to year, how the conflict evolves as it goes along. And I don't think you can capture that by just showing like one turn. Also, related to that, there's 2 really good videos out there already that show singular years or singular turns in this game. Wayne Hansen has a great one. I'll put a link to it down in the description. And then Bob Phaneuf, the owner and the designer of this game, has another video out that shows those singular turns. So instead, I wanted to do something a little different that captures the whole span and scope of the Vietnam War as it's played out in this game. With that in mind, let's talk a little bit about what we're looking at right now and what's going to happen as we start the conflict. So let's talk a little bit now about the ebb and flow of this conflict. As we look at the map right now, it's January 1965. The only military unit on the map is a singular South Vietnamese Army brigade up here in the Mekong region, way up here to the southern part of South Vietnam. There's no US forces here, there's no North Vietnamese Army or Viet Cong forces here, and there's, except for that singular brigade, there's no South Vietnamese Army regiments. So the early part of this campaign is we're going to see a lot of these regions in South Vietnam start to get populated by North Vietnamese Army regiments, Viet Cong forces, and political cadres that are going to try to swing the population against the US forces in the region. Now you might be wondering, okay, where are the US forces? They have a scheduled order of appearance. They're going to show up piecemeal over the first few years of the conflict, and they are all over here on the right side here of the map. They are all stacked up. All the units have their military designations. We've got Army units, we've got some Marine units. They are all ready to appear into the conflict. And over the first 3 or 4 years of the conflict, they're going to appear. Now, what's going to happen as the conflict moves forward, the first early parts of the year are going to be US forces fighting against North Vietnamese and fighting against the Viet Cong. But by the time we get to 1968, like 4 or 5 years into the conflict, the US forces are going to start to withdraw. And that brings the question is, what happens then? By 1971, almost all of the US forces are going to be gone. That's where the South Vietnamese Army comes in. Let's go take a look at the South Vietnamese Army. So here is the South Vietnamese Army. It's a big pile of units. And you might be saying, okay, do they have a kind of an order of appearance and things like that? The answer is no. One of the coolest things about this game is that we have to build this army. And that means we have to swing political influence and swing the police presence in the South Vietnamese provinces in order to be able to get them to start producing South Vietnamese army units that are going to be able to sustain the conflict once the US forces are gone. So not only in the early part of the conflict do we have to survive by fighting US against North Vietnamese and Viet Cong forces, at the same time that we're doing that, we have to build up the South Vietnamese Army. And that is a slow and tricky process that's going to take us a lot of time and effort. So we can win the early stages of the war, but if we don't win the political battle in South Vietnam, we're going to eventually lose the conflict, because when all the US forces are gone, the South Vietnamese Army won't be strong enough to stand on its own 2 feet and take on the Viet Cong and the North Vietnamese Army. Now, if we do that and we can build up the South Vietnamese Army, the last 3 to 4 years of the conflict is going to be the South Vietnamese Army against the North Vietnamese and Viet Cong to see if they can prevent Saigon from falling and in turn win the conflict. So with that in mind, I'm going to swing in now and I'm going to set up the very first kind of insurgency round, where we're going to see political cadres come in, we're going to see Viet Cong forces start to appear, and North Vietnamese Army forces start to appear, and Viet Cong forces are going to start to appear. So we'll take a look at that once that happens, and we'll talk about what the situation looks like. So the Vietnam War has now started. We've got a massive influx of Viet Cong forces, political cadres, and North Vietnamese Army regiments into the sphere here. Let's take a look at each zone, and this will also give us a chance to show a little bit about how the mechanics work in the game. Let's take a look at the southern 3 provinces first. We can see here the Mekong region is in fine shape. We have no political cadres coming in, no Viet Cong forces, and no North Vietnamese army regiments coming in as well. Saigon, a different story. We've got 2 political cadres here and 2 North Vietnamese army regiments. Let's talk a little bit about how the politics work in the game and how the regions themselves work. If we look here at Saigon, and I zoom in a little bit here, we can see that each province is divided up into 3 regions. We have a base area down here, and this is where our forces are going to be recovering and things like that. Then we have a populated area, and you can see these dotted lines here. These delineate the populated areas from the remote areas. The North Vietnamese Army regiments are all going to come into the remote areas, and then they have a chance each season to move down into the populated regions. Viet Cong forces are going to appear here, and political cadres appear here as well. And how the Viet Cong forces appear gets at the whole mechanic behind how we kind of pacify and take care, how we establish control over a region. So let's take a look at the political scorecard here. What's important is that these political cadres have -2s on them. That gives us, if we add up everything in this populated region, we get a value of -4. And now, if we go look at the political chart for Saigon, so here's the political scoreboard for the Saigon Fishhook region. And this basically, each region in the game has a scoreboard like this. We can see that in the middle here, we've got police points. This is what we're going to try to start to build up, is to build up our police force. But then on the outside here, we have this score track. And we mentioned that right now the score would be -4 of the political stability. Some point in the next turn, we're going to adjust this marker for that score, and then later in the turn we read what this result tells us, which is VC1. That means 1 strength point of VC forces is going to get added to that region because it's politically unstable. It's at -4 right now. So what we want to try to do in the game is to build up our stability, to take care of the political cadres, to reduce Viet Cong influence, and then get South Vietnamese army units in the area so that we can start to generate police points, and then we're going to get a police force in Saigon, and from that we can draw army recruits. So we are far away from that, given that the current situation in Saigon, that will be adjusted later, is probably going to be a -4. All right, if we come back out to Bien Ho, we can see that's at a -1 with two North Vietnamese Army regiments. So these are problem areas that will come up, but right now I'm not too worried about them. However, if we look at the middle region of South Vietnam, This is where we can see we have a lot of problems. We have 9 political cadres in here. Now there's a maximum of -10, but it means that this area is going to be generating 2 strength points worth of Viet Cong forces pretty much every season. Plus there's a North Vietnamese Army regiment up here. So this one here, the Cam Rahn area region, is in serious trouble. Unless we put forces in there right away, this will fall to the Viet Cong and we'll have our first fallen province. We don't want fallen provinces because what happens then is some of these political cadres will move to Saigon, which will make it pretty quick and pretty perilous that Saigon could fall. So this is a critical situation that we're going to have to respond to. Likewise, this central area here, Quy Nhon, has -10, 5 political cadres and a Viet Cong strength point in it here. No North Vietnamese forces, but if this were to end, unless we put something here, this area will fall as well. Now, we've only got squadron of helicopters over here, and then a kind of a lower strength regiment coming in here, and then we've got one Marine regiment that we'll look at a little bit more to the north. So somehow we're going to have to really bring as many forces as we can bring to bear here, but we just don't have much here yet. Likewise, the area to the right here, Quang Ngai, is in serious trouble too, -8, -1, that's -9, and there's 2 North Vietnamese Army regiments here that have a chance to infiltrate down. So this is under serious threat as well. If we go up to the northern part of South Vietnam, this is a little bit more stable. We have some North Vietnamese Army regiments in these 2 areas, Quang Tri and Hue, and then in Danang, we have 1 strength point of North Vietnamese Viet Cong forces. So troubles, but not immediate threats. As we look at this big picture and as we jump into action, we've only got 3 military units in the sphere right now. We're going to have to send them into these 3 areas. Our goal is to try to reduce the threats here, as well as keep an eye on these other lesser threats in some of these other regions, and hopefully we can get reinforcements in quick enough to not let some of these regions fall. Now, as an aside note, there's not much we can do about political cadres until we get to the Tet Offensive, and we'll talk more about that when we get there. We do have some special operations that we're going to run that's going to try to reduce them here, but for the most part, they kind of have a small chance that they're going to get caught up in some combat, but for the most part, there's not much we can do about them. We just kind of have to deal with the spawning Viet Cong forces that they generate until we get kind of later into the game. So we've got a lot of work to do here. Let's do it. We'll be back in about 6 months to see how we've done so far in this first part of the campaign. Okay, it's August 1965, and things are off to a pretty precarious start here. We might actually lose this fairly quickly. Let's go take a look at each of the regions and talk about them. Southern part of the regions, Mekong Delta is fine. This area, Bien Ho, has stayed relatively stable, but look what's happened in Saigon. These 2 North Vietnamese Army regiments moved down. We got an extremely bad roll, Snake Eyes, which allowed both of these regiments to drop down into the populated area. That means when we try to take on these Viet Cong forces here, we have to take on the North Vietnamese regiments too. This gives them a combat strength of 8. Early in the war, this is an extremely strong military force. We're trying to send troops from our bases to the more central parts of South Vietnam up into this area, and we're going to probably have to bring these South Vietnamese forces over. We're going to have to, this will spiral out and will fall within a few months unless we bring military might to bear on it. So this is our utmost priority, as quickly as we can get enough strength to knock out these North Vietnamese Army regiments and whittle down this Viet Cong forces here, because they're going to get so strong pretty soon unless we handle them. So the middle part of the map we've done well, but we've suffered a lot of casualties. The 101st Airborne is in action now. Their headquarters unit has arrived. The brigade has arrived. We whittled down with special operations. We took away a good percentage, 3 of the political cadres here, and then 1 was a victim of casualty in combat. So they have been reduced, but still very strong here. We've been able to fight them to a standstill, but as you can see, the 101st Airborne has taken 2 of it's been reduced by 2 of its strength points. So very soon that's going to have to go to recovery. This helicopter's been damaged. We're going to need to bring more forces up here. Fortunately, we do have a good influx of reinforcements. The 1st Cavalry is here in full strength, as well as 2 more brigades from the 1st Infantry Division. We're going to need to send some of these troops up to Saigon to help out there, but I'm hopeful that this the 1st Cavalry here can help out with this region, and another region where we're in trouble is right here. Very strong. We had a really bad combat phase over the past few months here. It's completely reduced one of our regiments down, one of our brigades down here, and then our 3rd Marine Brigade headquarters is almost depleted. It's going to have to go back and recover. We're going to have to bring more forces to bear here if we want to prevent this from falling, and forces are not abundant, especially if we look over here to Quang Ngai. We see very strong Viet Cong forces again. We've got the 3rd Marine in action here, but they have suffered casualties and they're fighting against some pretty significant Viet Cong forces. Over to the north, North Vietnamese Army regiments have advanced into Hue and Quang Tri. This will create problems later, but it's not an imperative. And then slowly but surely, the Viet Cong forces in Danang are building up. Right now, it's not our major threat. That central area in Saigon are our top 2 priorities. So as we head into the fall of 1965, we've got to continue to try to stabilize these regions down here, hopefully with more reinforcements. Then our biggest battle, though, is going to be up in Saigon. That's our ultimate and immediate threat. We have to get forces up there to take that head on, and that's going to be a pretty big battle. We're back. It's December 1965. The combat in the central portion of South Vietnam still raging on, but let's start out by taking a look at the southern part of the country. Good news in the Mekong region, no activity going on there. Also, Bien Ho, we had the 1st Infantry Division come up on their way up to Saigon to engage with the North Vietnamese forces up in the remote areas of the Bien Ho province. We were able to clean that out. So that brings us to the big part and why we're here, Saigon. The first battle of Saigon. As we zoom in and take a look at what's going on, we can see a major operation going on here around Christmas time, 1965. We're going to cover this live to show how combat works too. We've got 2 North Vietnamese Army regiments, 4 strength points worth of Viet Cong forces, and a whole plethora of US forces here. So combat works like this. Basically, you tally up the strength points in the bottom left part of the units. So these 2 regiments have 3 apiece, and the 4 there gives the North Vietnamese forces a strength of 10. We have the elements of the US 101st Airborne here. We have the entire 1st Army Infantry Division here. Our sole South Vietnamese Army Regiment Brigade is here, and then we have helicopters helping to coordinate the attack. Our total strength points are 15, and basically I'll show you the combat chart here. We roll 2 dice, 1 green, 1 red. The green die is for the US forces, the red die is for the North Vietnamese forces, and then we see the number of strength points and steps reduced by the combat. We want high on green and low on red. Nice, we get a 52, that's good. So if we look at our attack on the North Vietnamese forces, we have 15 strength points. A 5 gives us 6 steps and points worth of damage. These North Vietnamese forces, where we take their losses first, so we take these steps out, 1, 2, 3, 4, that takes care of those 2 regiments. Then we have 4 strength points here. We have 2 more left to distribute, so that's going to be reduced from a 4 down to a 2. So heavy casualties for the North Vietnamese. US forces, if we look at the roll they had a 2 on a 10, which means 5 steps worth of damage. We look for the unit with the highest amount of steps. They all have 2 right now. Then we go through priority orders. The first is helicopters, which we're going to flip over to make it go down to 1 strength point. Then we need to take out 4 more. The South Vietnamese Army Brigade here is one of the later ones. We're going to take line brigades next, and then headquarter brigades, which function just a little bit differently in terms of how you recover units to full strength. Because there's 4 of these here and we need 4 more points, we're going to reduce all of those. So here we can see that the US forces and the South Vietnamese forces in the region heavily depleted by that combat, but a lot of damage inflicted. That's nice to bring that down to 2. Now you might be thinking, oh, well, that's good. This battle's taken care of, but not so fast there. You'll notice as well, so we have 4 political cadre points here. 2 in that gives us a -6 in this region. So this region is heavily swung to North Vietnamese influence. And you also notice that the U.S. land forces, the line regiments here, line brigades, have a -2 political strength as well. So the more U.S. ground presence that's in a region, the more destabilized it gets and the more it goes to the north. So we're going to have a -10 here, which means 3 Viet Cong strength point worth of forces are going to come in. Plus, it's the year end, which means we could have more political cadres coming in and more North Vietnamese Army regiments. So this is far from over, although that was a big step in the right direction. I'll also call attention here that helicopters have a political influence of 0, so they can be handy to help if you got to clean up an area and you don't want to destabilize it at the same time. And then the South Vietnamese Army regiments have a +1, and this is the lever that we use to kind of start to build up police forces and kind of to stabilize regions and swing them more to the South's favor. So I'm going to go back now. I'm going to conduct the combat for the rest of the region here. Then I'm going to bring in the forces, the replenishments for the North Vietnamese political cadres and the North Vietnamese regiments, and then we're going to take a look at how things look as we're heading into 1966. All right, so it's January 1966. We've survived the first year. 11 more years to go. Let go us. North Vietnamese Army regiments, 10 new regiments have been flooded into the area. Political cadres have been reinforced. And now we have to also deal with anti-aircraft. Let's take a quick look at the situation in each of our provinces. All right, so as we look at the south part of South Vietnam, Mekong region is fine, and there's a distribution pattern that you use when you bring in the North Vietnamese reinforcements, and it seems fairly unlikely that the Mekong region is going to have any enemy reinforcements in the early part of the war, at least. Saigon, as we feared, 2 new North Vietnamese Army brigades in the remote areas that have a very high likelihood that they'll drop down into the populated areas, and we'll be heading for another big battle in Saigon. They are reinforced, and we are going to have to take on those reinforcements as well. And it's not necessarily good because most of our forces, if we look in close, have suffered 2 hit points worth of damage. So our forces are depleted. We're going to have to start recovering them and getting them back into action here. Let's now take a look at the Bien Ho region here. They did get a political cadre in here. We can also see you get a number of anti-aircraft units equal to the same number of political cadres. If we bring a helicopter into combat in this region, we flip that over, and there's a 60% chance that the helicopter unit takes a step loss. Then that anti-aircraft unit is removed until the next year, until it gets replenished. So we're going to be taking more losses to our helicopters as the war escalates into 1966. But on the whole, we got 1 North Vietnamese regiment there, fairly stable. I mean, we need to clean it up a little bit, but yeah, it's not one of our bigger worries. Saigon is problematic at this point. The biggest drain on our forces is the central part of South Vietnam, where again, we have now 3 North Vietnamese Army regiments here in Quang Ngai. We have 2 that came in here to Quy Nhon. We had 1 that came in here to Cam Rahn, and also more political cadres reinforcing down here. 1 of these North Vietnamese Army regiments dropped down. So we got a lot of fighting in here. Now we do get a good number of reinforcements coming in, and they come in right near here. The Marines come in here just to the north at Danang, over here off map a little bit. We'll look at that. And then our Army reinforcements come in down here. They've just arrived in Cam Rahn, so we're starting to see the 25th Infantry Division in here, more helicopters coming in. Over the course of 1966, we get our biggest influx of reinforcements. This is when a lot of this combat's going on against North Vietnam. None of these regions I'm comfortable with at this point. They're all problematic, and they're all going to kind of require a careful allocation of our forces. We're going to have to start recycling our forces and getting them to recover. Most of our forces have step losses and are about ready to drop out of combat. So these new units coming in are going to have to take their place, and we're going to have to start recovering the strength on some of these other units. But precarious, nothing critical at this time, but we have to keep doing well. The north part of South Vietnam, again, more infantry regiments coming in here. At some point, we're going to have to try to take care of these. Ideally, I think with helicopters, because that will allow us to not increase the political instability in these regions. So we can bring helicopters up here. We'll have to bring quite a strong force of them, but clean these areas up, preferably before these regiments drop down. So if we have enough forces, we might want to try to move some of our forces up here into Hue and Quang Tri to try to be able to kind of clean up this before it gets out of hand. Likewise, Danang here now is up to 5 Viet Cong strength points in forces, so a lot of Viet Cong activity in Danang. We're going to have to answer that question pretty soon before that spirals out of control. So points of concern, they're not critical at this point, but we do need to keep an eye on them. We'll probably, during some point in 1966, need to divert some of our forces up here to try to take care of those. So that means us to being really effective and strong down in the central part of South Vietnam. So that brings us to the end of our first episode. I'm going to stop this here because we've gone on for quite a while and carried out the first year. I think our next episodes will go a lot faster because we won't have to do as much explaining about how the game works mechanically and all those kinds of things. Let me know what you think down below in the comments. I'll put a link up here to the next episode as soon as it is ready. Happy to answer questions, and if anything else you've got to say, other thoughts about the game, I look forward to reading them. Thanks everybody for tuning in. We'll see you in 1966.